In August of 2024, I finally fulfilled one of my all-time dreams of visiting Japan at least once. Naturally, as a big weeb, I stayed in Akihabara City, which in turn happens to have the highest amount of visual novel stores that I'm aware of in any city. So in this video, I want to highlight the stores I went to that sells physical visual novel stuff, whether it be physical copies, wall scroll tapestries, figures, pins, stickers, etc. I want to give a huge shout out to the following users who have given me advice on which visual novel stores to go to before and during my trip. The order I'll talk about the stores is me ranking them from my least favorite all the way to the ones I consider the best. At the bottom we have Surugaya Front Shop, which I accidentally mistook as another Surugaya specialty store as there are multiple of those in Akiba. I'm gonna be blunt, this was by far the worst store I went to that had visual novel stuff to the point I didn't even want to include it. You go to the third floor past all the normie weeb stuff and generic 3D PD boobies and you get one small shelf of visual novel physicals of certain niche titles most have never heard of before. The only positive I can even give is there's a few VN advertisement posters, but basically every VN store does that. F tier. Gonna move on. Next, we have Getchuya. This one is certainly an update to Surugaya Front, as there's at least a whole full room of visual novel related goods. I had kind of high hopes as Getchu is one of the more known online VN stores and media sites I'm aware of in Japanese. The decorations of various advertisements, including TVs playing visual novel OPs, are pretty nice. I also like the shikishis of characters from popular visual novels like ones developed by August hanging around. Sadly, while there is a selection of visual novels to choose from, it's definitely not the strongest. I mostly saw a lot of random nukige with just a shelf of some kind of popular stuff like Nekopara. There are options to pre-order some of the upcoming new eroge releases and visual novel merch, but there are several other stores that do the same thing but also have more options. I also saw some kind of amusing merch or what I assume to be sex toys based on Dona Dona characters, but otherwise Getchuya was very disappointing, but it's at least worth a look to see if other stores later don't have the thing you want. D tier. Next, we have Melonbooks. One unfortunate flaw is that it's easily the second smallest store even behind Getchu in terms of size. This in turn makes the quantity of item availability much lower. That said, there's still enough series I actually recognize compared to Surugaya Front. And the main reason Melonbooks is over Getchu is that there's a few unique gachapon machines where you insert 500 yen to roll for randomized merch from a certain series. There were 4 total machines, with the most recognizable being 2 based on Saga Planet's visual novels, Ambitious Mission and King Koi. I didn't personally roll for these, but as King Koi is quite the popular visual novel, I can imagine someone coming to the store just for this. D tier. Now we're moving to a store I overall actually kind of like, Mandarake Collectibles. This takes place in a tall building, 8 floors. To reach the main eroge visual novel floor, we have to go to the 4th floor. You can take the elevator, but I've noticed at least in Akiba elevators, they're much slower and packed compared to USA ones, so I actually recommend taking the stairs. This is a floor mostly dedicated to doujin stuff, so there's just one shelf of physical copies of visual novels, but the lineup is actually decent. It has some popular titles like Nukatashi, but also a bunch of random niche ones. Not the strongest set of titles, but definitely a stronger set compared to everything else I've talked about so far. However, Mandarake is the first store to have both physical copies of visual novels, but also decent merch. In this case, the niche that Mandarake has over the others on this list is a strong selection of art books from visual novels. I saw art books from titles as old as Ayakashi Bito to as new as Grisaya Phantom Trigger. Sadly, these art books only take up maybe a shelf or two, but the lineup of these aren't half bad. On the same floor, there are a few other very specific VN themed merch that I found, like a boob mousepad of Aine from Bokuten, but the options of these are extremely limited. There's also a section for Fate Stay stuff, but let's be real, Fate is basically a mainstream anime gacha series instead of a visual novel one at this point, but I thought I'd point it out. Overall, Mandarake isn't half bad, it has its own niches, I just think every other store I've tried is more consistently good. C tier. And now we get to the actual really good stuff, to the point every store from this point onward was really hard to rank. Next, I decided to go with Surugaya Specialty Store. Similar to Mandarake, this is a store divided into 7 floors. Unlike Mandarake though, the floor with visual novels is at least 90% dedicated to visual novels, which is great. You are greeted with a lot of advertisement posters of different visual novels everywhere, showing this is the floor dedicated to the visual novel crowd. The physical visual novel lineup is quite solid, taking up several shelves with a mix of many titles I recognize, including ones I didn't see in other stores. I even saw a physical for the popular Denpa visual novel Sayonara o Oshiete. Surugaya also has solid merch, mostly of lewd tapestry wall scrolls. If these are your thing, this is probably the best store for them as I saw the most of them. This is the first store I'm going to talk about multiple floors as well, as on the 5th floor, there's a small section of small niche eroge merch like fans, folders, and behind a glass case, things like a really expensive plushie of Shinku from Iroseka. There's also a section dedicated to eroge made for women like titles like LKYT and Lamento Beyond the Void. Overall, I quite like Surugaya Specialty Store. It's definitely solid and has a good amount of options. I just think every store above does what Surugaya does, but better or has more unique specializations. B tier. Next, we have Sofmap Amusement. This is a great store, as it's one of the few that has 2 floors dedicated to visual novel goods. The 4th floor is dedicated to brand new, unopened titles, and the selection is quite good there, with many visual novels that I actually recognize and decently organized too. There's a large selection of physical visual novels and merch you can pre-order. There's a surprisingly good amount of merch including gachapon, wall scroll tapestries, acrylic stands, etc. However, at least when I went in August 2024, the merch was mostly focused on Saga Planets and Motosoft titles like Kinkoi, Hatsuyuki Sakura, Wagamama High Spec, and Hamadashi Creative. If you like those companies, you're eating good, but if you don't care for those companies or games, it might be disappointing. The floor above, the 5th floor, focuses on second-hand physical visual novels, no merch. This is likely where you're going to find many of the popular older titles. For example, this is where I bought a physical containing the entire trilogy of the Miyazora or Skyfall of Stars trilogy, something the other stores did not have together. It feels weird giving Sofmap Amusement a high B tier because it's really quite good. I just prefer the final 3 that much more. K-Books, on the 3rd floor of the Akihabara Radio Kaikan store, is one I stupidly almost missed out on. In terms of pure variety of visual novel merch, this is by far the best. To start off strong, there's a section that purely has merch from key visual novels, though when I went, it mostly had Little Busters and Summer Pocket stuff. Still, this selection of key merch was quite strong regardless, something I certainly did not see in any other store. The fun doesn't end there though, as there's an entire aisle of just visual novel eroge merch. I saw stuff from Yuzusoft, Saga Planets, Purplesoft, Palette, Urawaru Mono, Random Nukige, including I believe Venus Blood. This aisle contains different types of merch too, like wall scroll tapestries, body pillows, stickers, acrylic stands, etc. I have to reiterate, in terms of pure merch variety, this is by far the best of the list and why K-Books is in my personal top 3. There are Fate Stay focused sections, but as I said in my Mandarake section, Fate is a mainstream anime gacha series at this point, so does it even really count? Anyway, I have to give K-Books a strong A tier. You may not have any physical visual novels to buy, but the merch it offers is just that good. Ranking 2nd place on this list is an interesting one, a Yuzusoft Specialty Store. You find it by going into this easy to miss small building and walking up to the 2nd floor. I may have praised K-Books for its sheer excellent variety of visual novel merch, however, remember, it's limited to a few aisles at best. This Yuzusoft store, this is the only store 100% dedicated to visual novels, which in a way objectively makes it the best. The decorations and presentation are amazing, with Yuzusoft themed signs showing the rules of the store, large acrylic stands of characters from the newest title at the time, Tenchi Sozo Reboot, and the merch. Oh boy, the Yuzusoft merch. If you wanted a merch of any specific Yuzusoft character, especially the middle to modern titles, there are multiple of each character to choose from. You have stickers, figures, physical copies, acrylic stands, mugs, lewd wall scrolls, you name it. The main thing I had fun with is the gachapon, as this is by far the highest amount of gachapons of any visual novel store. You can win acrylic stands or keychains from basically every Yuzusoft title, though it leans more from the titles starting from Dracarriot all the way up to Angelic Chaos Reboot. There are at least 10 gachapon machines total, many dedicated to winning characters from specific titles. The designs from these gachapon are unique, something I don't see anywhere else. If you like Yuzusoft in any capacity, you have to check out this store. It's a Yuzusoft fan dream. A tier would have been the best if not for the number 1 spot. What I consider the overall best spot is Trader Headquarters and Trader 2. You may be wondering why I have 2 on the top, and well, despite the 2 stores being separated physically, They are clearly extensions of each other, offering very similar products with similar store structures. Trader Headquarters, more specifically the 6th floor, to me is easily the best jack-of-all-trades visual novel store. Surugaya, Specialty, and Sofmap Amusement have a very solid amount of physical copies and merch options. I think Trader Headquarters is easily a step above them in both quality and quantity. The presentation was solid, I saw so many titles that I recognized, and unlike many stores, had many series that had complete sets. So for example, actually had Baldur's Sky Dive 1 and 2, in addition to its many spin-offs. However, in terms of merch, while it doesn't specialize as much as K-Books, it still has some very solid options from raw scrolls, body pills, and even art books and soundtracks. When I went in August of 2024, it had the very rare original version of Sui no Sora. In my opinion, if you could only visit one visual novel store in Akihabara and you're not a pure Yuzusoft shill, I would 100% go to Trader Headquarters. That said, it's worth talking about Trader 2. This is more or less an extension of Trader Headquarters, potentially having physical copies and merch that the main Trader store does not have, just in a somewhat smaller store. There are a few things I'd say Trader 2 does have over one though. The first is the presentation in a specific sense. I like that the steps leading up to the 2nd floor, aka the visual novel specific floor of Trader 2, have Marshmallow All the Way Home main heroines on the steps, likely because there is an upcoming Sasa body pillow. The other positive is that Trader 2 is literally right next to Melonbooks, Mandarake, and Surugaya Specialty Store. So if you want to prioritize just going to one small area in Akihabara, where you can easily go to 4 different stores for coverage, Trader 2 might be more ideal than Trader 1. But regardless, Trader, at least to me, is easily the best of the visual novel stores, with one of the few I went to multiple times on my 1-week trip, easily an S tier. I may have ranked these stores from a personal worst to best, but honestly, all of them, except Surugaya Front Shop, all have niches that other fans may prioritize over what I do. Regardless, I hope that if you plan on vacationing in Japan and plan to go to Akihabara sometime, or hell, if you live in Japan and plan on going to Akihabara, I hope this video gave you a good idea of what stores you can go to in Akihabara, Japan to look for physical visual novel goods. If there's any stores you think I missed, please mention it in a comment so I can pin it and check out those stores myself in a potential future Japan trip. P.S. If you're interested in what I purchased on that Japan trip, well, let's just say half the allowance I brought was visual novel merch and leave it at that.